In this part of the tutoring session, we covered agency, including dual and designated agency, as well as sub-agency to the seller. We also looked at a couple of example problems from the textbook. So if you have any issues or other questions about agency, please leave them in the comments below, and I'll make a new video just for that topic. There we go. Number 15. Sally Smith and Bob Broker are dual agents at XYZ Realty. So they both work for XYZ. That means XYZ Realty is the agent.
Principal?
They are the principal is the buyer or the seller.
Okay.
The XYZ firm is the agent, and they're the dual agent. And then the broker within the firm, they are also dual agents when it's a dual agency situation. So Sally Smith and Bob Broker are both dual agents. Bob presented an offer to Sally on one of her listings. Sally presents a counteroffer. So Bob has made an offer. Sally has talked to her seller, and they've come up with a counter to that offer. Sends it back to Bob. Bob tells his buyer, we've got a counter. At 11:30 in the morning, the buyer accepts the counter offer in Bob's presence. He is watching them accept it. Accept it, it means they sign off on it. They say, yep, I'll do that counter. We accept. So the question right now is, are we under contract yet? We haven't gotten into 9 so much yet, but what we'll learn is to be considered under contract, the offer must be accepted and communicated. Not just accepted, not just signed, but told to the other side that it got signed. The communication is key. So you're looking for communication. That's why they say in Bob's presence, because when he watched them sign it in person, that's different than if they signed it and then called him later to tell him they signed it, right? So it was communicated and accepted pretty much exactly the same moment because he watched it happen. Now, is he pretty much the same person as Sally? Yes, they are both dual agents. Now, Bob is helping the buyer, Sally's helping the seller. They're not going to tell each other negotiating things, but they are both dual agents in this situation. So because Bob watched them sign it, therefore accept it, now it's under contract, because that's the gist of this whole question. Is it under contract? Let's get to the rest of it. Meanwhile, at 11:45 on the same day, the seller gets a better offer. He wants to accept it, tells Sally, withdraw that counteroffer I made. We taking it back. Nope, forget it, just kidding, because I want this bigger, better one. Sally immediately communicates this to Bob before Bob can tell her of the buyer's acceptance. Which of the following is true? Now, in a normal transaction where it's 2 separate firms, not dual agency at all, then if she has not yet been told and communicated to that the counter was accepted, then they're okay here. Seller's going to be happy. Seller got to withdraw the counter, take the higher offer. But that is not what is going on here. What's going on here is dual agency. In dual agency, when Bob saw the signing, saw the acceptance happen, it was under contract at that point. And even though in 15 minutes a better offer is coming in, that seller is already under contract with Bob's buyers. It's the dual agency that makes the difference here. And that is confusing. And I understand, and I feel bad for you. So Sally's seller cannot withdraw the counter because acceptance in Bob's presence provides notification to the seller. That's the one we changed it to, right? That's the one I informed you that is the actual correct answer. Yeah. C, I believe, was the one that officially was told in the back of the book that was the right. Sally's seller can withdraw the counter because Bob did not tell her before the seller asked. Well, that would apply again in a non-dual agency situation. But in dual agency, it's a whole different ballgame. And that's why some of those agents that I talk to say, I don't even do dual agency because I don't want to set myself up for something like this. You can see how people would be pretty ticked off in this situation. That seller mad that he couldn't even, by the way, Bob watched them sign it and now it's under contract. The seller doesn't yet have it in his possession. Doesn't matter. It's still under contract. I know, right? It's crazy. And then it comes back to the money part too. The buyer has not given him the money yet because it was just signed, but it doesn't matter. It's still under contract. Now, there's some other element about the money that can give that seller a possible way to get out of the contract. If that buyer doesn't provide the due diligence money on the same day as the contract becomes a contract, that same day by midnight, then the seller can say, okay, I don't have my money yet. You're supposed to give me that due diligence money by the day of execution. Sorry. Looking at the chat right now. No. The designated thing, they would absolutely say the word designated if that were what's going on here. So you don't have to worry about guessing about that. They will, because that's totally different too. Designated makes it more like back to two different firms. Makes it like it's two different firms again. So the book says that A is the right answer. Is that what you're saying, Shane? Yeah, it says A. Interesting. I don't know why I was told that. Well, then I guess we're okay then, because A should be the right answer. Okay, good. I had a list of possible errors, and maybe the list of errors was wrong. But I'll double check. Well, good. But does that make sense?
Neil,
more importantly,
in a situation where it would be under contract, both parties have to accept and communicate
right
to the other party.
Right.
But in a dual agency, it only takes one of it, which is,
well, the communication is considered having happened because both agents are dual agents.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. Number 16 was not correct. Okay. All right. That's maybe what I was thinking about. Number 16, which of the following statements is true concerning designated? Okay, so let's talk about designated. Dual agency means the loyalty is no longer there because you can't tell the buyer the least the seller will take. You can't tell the seller the most the buyer is willing to pay. What if you explain all that to a potential buyer and they say, well, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard of. Why would anybody ever do that? I don't like it. I'm leaving. I'm going down the street. I'll find my own buyer agent at this other firm and I'll come back and buy your listing then because I'm not doing this dual agency stuff. You could say to them, if you're the listing agent, wait a second, I got one more option for you. Let me connect you with another broker within my firm, right? That person can be your designated agent. Your designated dual agent, by the way, is the official term. Now they're going to represent only you. I represent only my seller. We can treat it like it's two separate firms again. Loyalty is restored. Designated dual agency is still under the same roof of one firm, but the loyalty's back, and you can treat it like it's two separate firms. One thing that can disqualify a broker within that firm from being allowed to become the designated buyer agent here is if they somehow already know a piece of negotiating confidential information about the seller. If they somehow know that because maybe they're your best friend in the office and you told them and you shouldn't have. Maybe you got so excited when you got that listing, you said, let me tell you, I'm so excited. I know we're overpriced at $450, but they already told me they would take $425. They just want to try the $450 for a little bit. If you did that, now you've just disqualified that person from being able to be a designated buyer agent on the other side because they know a piece of confidential information. So that's another testable question. What can keep a person from becoming a designated dual agent? Two main reasons. They know a piece of confidential information about the other party, or it's also not allowed that a broker in charge is a designated dual agent on the other side of a transaction from a provisional under them. You as a provisional can't...
What was that second one? That was a long statement.
Yeah, I know, sorry. You as a provisional broker, you have a broker in charge who is supposed to be somebody you can confide in, that you can say, hey, here's this new transaction I'm working, help me with it. You've got to be able to do that with them, that level of involvement with them. So therefore, a lot of brokers in charge list and sell property on the side. They act as BIC, but they also still do their own stuff. If they have a listing and you have a buyer for that broker in charge's listing, then you as a provisional broker cannot be a designated buyer agent when your BIC is the one on the other side as the designated listing agent. All the other combinations are allowed. A BIC can be a designated agent up against a non-provisional within his firm. Two non-provisionals, obviously. You as a provisional you are allowed to be up against a non-provisional within your firm. But you, the provisional, cannot be up against your own BIC in a designated agency situation. You can, by the way, be up against the BIC of another firm because they're not your BIC. So it's not about how much they know. It's about their relationship with you, the confiding, because they can't look out for their client's best interest while still being able to guide you through the transaction when your client is the opposite principle of their own, right? So two things there. So designated, that's what designated is. Loyalty is back. Which of the following is true about designated? Let's see. A broker in charge can be a designated dual agent if the other agent is a provisional broker under his direct supervision. That is exactly wrong. So that is not the case. We just said that is not allowed. A broker cannot be appointed as designated dual if the broker has prior knowledge of confidential information about the other party. That sounds right. So let's put that in our pocket and make sure there's not a better answer. Only the broker in charge can serve as a designated agent for both parties. That is not true. The whole point of designated agency is it's two different brokers, by the way. Designated dual, here's another possible test question. How many brokers are involved in designated dual agency? At minimum, at least two. One designated for the buyer, the other designated for the seller. So in a designated dual agency situation, there's going to be at least two brokers involved. One firm, because they're under the same firm, that's what makes it dual, but one designated for the one party and the other for the other. Now, by the way, I said at least two. You could have three agents being all designated buyer's agents for the buyer's side and another couple of agents that are helping the seller on the seller's side. So it's not just only two agents means it's designated dual. It's at least, because it could be a team, all of whom are acting as long as it's written up this way, designated dual agents. The other part of that is, what about true? I call it true. If it's not designated dual agency, I'll call it true dual agency or non-designated dual agency. So in a true dual agency situation, what's the minimum number of brokers involved? It's going to be at least one, right? And you traditionally think of it as Neil has a listing, a buyer calls him on this listing and asks him to help them, and Neil therefore becomes, if his firm allows him and if he chooses, becomes a dual agent between the buyer and the seller. That's the bare minimum, at least one. But what if Neil has a partner like Bob and Sally? They weren't partners, but they were both dual agents. So both of them were acting as dual, not designated, both as dual. It could be a whole bunch of people that are all acting as dual agents in that situation. So don't think of it as a one versus two thing. So C is definitely not right. And then there's no provision that allows for an oral designated dual agency to exist. So the reason they're saying non-written, oral meaning non-written, is you could actually, for a little while, say, look, guys, you're going to let me be a designated dual agent? Shake or nod, right? Basically, don't need to write it down yet. The only way that can happen is attached to what's called oral buyer agency. When you're talking to a buyer for the first time, they may need some time to decide they like you. They might want to, what I call, kick the tires a little bit. They might want you to prove yourself to them some, and maybe even show them a house or two without having them sign anything. You're still going to explain the disclosure, the working with agents disclosure. You're still going to explain what buyer agency means, but they won't sign anything. And you have a business decision to make. Are you going to kick them out of your car, or are you going to be patient and let them eventually, inevitably come to love you, as you know they will. But you need to give them a little time first, right? Need to date them a little bit. That is called oral buyer agency. That's an option that if your firm allows, and if you choose to do it, because you may not want to, and your firm may not want you to, but if everybody's cool with it, you could say, oh, well, here's how agency works, Mr. New Buyer Client, potential client. The seller's going to have their own agent. You get to have your own agent. I would love to be that person. Hopefully we decide to work together. So let me do that for you. That means I can protect your confidentiality. I can be the one you confide in, and I can help you with whatever. And you don't have to talk to a million different agents. You can just talk to me, and I will find what you need and help you through the whole process. And they might say, well, that sounds great, but I don't sign anything on the first day. Can't we just look at the house I called you about? You could say, well, yes, we can, but we do need to make this decision at some point. But for today, I'll give you this one, and let's go look at a couple of houses. But your capacity in that moment is as an oral buyer agent. As an oral buyer agent, not in writing, the commission says you still owe them all of old car. You got to give them all that fiduciary responsibility. But what do you think they owe you back? It's not like it as if you were, not the same as if you had it in writing. Since you don't have it in writing, they don't owe you anything. In fact, you could show them 5 houses this morning, and you're the oral buyer agent. You give them all of old car. This afternoon, they call their cousin who just got their license and say, oh yeah, she showed me those 5 listings we were talking about. I've narrowed down the 4. I didn't want to waste your time. Let's write up an offer on the 5th one. And there's nothing you could do about it, because that's the downside of being an oral buyer agent. They have no loyalty to you. That's the trade-off. So some agents say, I don't even want to do it. Usually it's agents that got burned just like that somehow. And so they'll tell people, look, I won't do the oral buyer agency thing, but I will do limited written. Let's just write it up for today only. Don't you think it's fair that if I show you something today that you end up wanting to buy, that I get to be the one that helps you with it? And they may not think that. They might hesitate and say, not really. That's a great time for you to exit. And be thankful that you didn't waste any more time than just those couple hours. Gets a little weird, right? So in this moment of oral buyer agency, you also need to explain to them, oh, you want to see my listing, or you want to see a listing of my firm? Well, in order to do that, I need to tell you that if you want my full protection, I can be your designated buyer agent, designated dual agent, helping you as a buyer. But since we're only on the oral buyer agency phase, then that designated dual can be an oral declaration, so to speak, just as long as it's not yet written. Because an oral buyer agency agreement can never make you any money. You'll never make any money with an oral buyer agency agreement, because the commission requires it become written at the moment you make an offer on their behalf. It only carries you. You could show them, you could have an oral buyer agency agreement with somebody for 2 years. Every Saturday you show them 5 properties. If you want to do that to yourself and to your family. And then finally they're like, oh, I like one. Let's make an offer. And you would say to them, okay, well, great. Whew, it's about time. Let's put this in writing. Now, if you do it in the wrong order, you could really mess yourself up. You are so happy after 2 years of showing them houses and they're finally excited about one, and you've never asked them to put the buyer agency into writing. You've always just ridden this oral buyer agency thing this whole time. You go to the coffee house, you write up the offer. Mistake number 1. Don't write the offer until you get the agency stuff nailed down. But you write the offer and you say, okay, let me go present this offer. Oh, wait, I forgot. Before I leave, remember that thing about agency we talked about 2 years ago, and how I could be an oral buyer agent to let you kick my tires, and in the back of your mind, it's like, and then I was too chicken to ever talk to you about it again. And because we were getting along so well, I didn't want to bring it up because it's an awkward conversation, and I just didn't bother to put it in writing all this time. And now here we are. We have an offer in hand. I got to have this thing in writing before I can present this offer. What if they were to say, what? Why are you pressuring me? I don't want to sign an agency agreement. Can't we just do it like we've been doing it this whole time? Just present the offer. Well, it might be that that seller has decided not to pay anybody that is not an actual buyer's agent. That's in the multiple listing service data sheet. I'll show it to you next week. At the bottom of the page, it says, how much money am I going to pay the buyer agent if the person helping the buyer is an official buyer agent of theirs? I'll pay them 3%. And then right out beside that, it says, but how much am I going to pay them if they're not a buyer's agent? If they're not a buyer's agent, by default, what do you think they are? What do you think they're categorized if they're not called a buyer's agent? They've not been hired by the buyer. They've got to be something. What did they start out being? What are all agents for all sellers? There it is, Jennifer. You're a seller subagent. You were acting like a buyer agent all this time, but they won't sign the written version, and you have an offer to present, and therefore they won't sign buyer agency. You just became a seller subagent. The bad news is on that MLS data sheet, quite frequently it says seller is going to pay a seller subagent working with the buyer 0%. Many, many times they're not giving them anything. Used to be they might give a buyer agent 3 and then maybe a seller subagent 2 or a little less than. Why different? Why less? Because of liability. Because what we'll learn next week is that when you are a buyer agent, it is on your shoulders a little more if something goes wrong. If the square footage is off, it's also up to you to recognize that the square feet is different or verify things. You can't just say, well, the listing agent told me wrong in the MLS. If you're a buyer's agent and it gets real ugly and they want to start suing people and coming after agents, they're going to come to you as well as the listing agent because you have a little more responsibility because you were the buyer's agent. If you were just a sub-agent to the seller the whole time, they're pretty much going to bypass you and go straight to the seller and the listing agent to complain or to sue or whatever about the incorrect information or whatever violation they feel took place. Therefore, because there's a little more liability when the agent helping the buyer is a sub-agent, a seller might say, well, I don't even want to go there. Forget that. I'm not interested in selling my house to any buyers that don't have an actual buyer agent. If the agent helping that buyer is a sub-agent to the seller, meaning there's no paperwork that says they've been hired as a buyer's agent, they can just keep moving, not interested in selling to them because I don't want that extra liability. And I'll encourage this to happen by not paying them, right? If they're a sub-agent to seller, they're making 0. Sometimes you won't see different. You'll see the same price for both because that's a seller who's like, I don't care, just bring me an offer. I'm not too worried about the liability. How real is the liability concern? No big deal until it is. So just however much the person cares about. I explain all this to my sellers when I list a house, and they usually say, yeah, okay, let's pay full amount to the buyer agent, whatever that is, and then 0 to a seller sub-agent because I don't want to mess with somebody that's not an actual buyer agent for their buyer either. That's why, and I'm giving you a lot, but hang in there. We'll reiterate all this next week. That goes back to the word selling. The word selling agent. That's why we say the selling agent is on the buyer's side. What we don't know by this statement, Neil is the selling agent for this buyer. What you don't know is Neil a buyer agent or a sub-agent? We don't know what that is by this information. It would need to tell us more. Because if I'm helping a buyer, I could be an actual full-out buyer's agent because they hired me with a buyer agency agreement, or they might refuse to hire me with a buyer agency, but I could still choose to help them and be considered a sub-agent as long as whatever they ended up buying actually paid me something that's not just 0. If I'm limited. That's why it goes back to your disclosure and your explanation and this oral buyer agency thing. That's why I say don't drag it out. It's so tempting for agents to not want to explain all this. And this took longer because it's the first time you're hearing it. In real life, you get to where you can kind of just rattle it off and explain it quicker to the consumer because they don't need to know all the ins and outs that we just went through. But get in front of this bus. And I will do oral buyer agency, but not for long. I might show them a few houses or the first day, but if they're showing hesitancy about even signing something, I've just been burned too many times. And not too long ago, actually. Felt all the intuition, and I went and rolled with it and showed them 2 or 3 days, and then inevitably they ghosted me. And they ended up going with somebody else, and there's nothing I could do about it. I had no buyer agency agreement with them. They were referred to me by somebody, so I felt like I had a little more of a sure thing. But shame on me, right? It's my own fault.
Mm-hmm.
So that can happen. That's why some people say, I don't even do it. It's a business decision. And your firm might say, we don't want you to do it. So oral buyer agency is the only time that this designated dual agency could exist. Pretty much only while you're showing property. And it would involve property listed by your firm, right? Thanks for joining us. I hope this was helpful to you. If you have more suggestions, let me know. Otherwise, look for part 3 of this tutoring session right here.